All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? It is Max with BuzzTox here, and I am back with the Westworld Season 3 finale to really do a live stream and have a discussion about everything. And I already see in the chat, Brandon Hiera says, ready for the rant. And I'm not going to rant. Actually, before I get into it, I really want to talk about my one video where I did a review, posted at 12 o'clock yesterday, and I think it was very clear that I was not happy. Reading the comment section, that, I need a thick skin, that I'm just unhappy that my theory didn't work out. Look, when you're filming something just after the episode ends, you're naturally, it's hard to pull yourself together to do a cohesive review. And that's why it's also a reaction. It's my initial impression. And to be honest with you, I actually enjoyed watching the Westworld Season 3, the last episode. I'm not just saying that. I genuinely enjoyed watching the show. But I came off of watching the post-credit scene of William strolling into the Delos headquarters and being killed. So I was very upset because for me it always comes down to character. And that's the same reason why I was upset with Game of Thrones the last season. It's the same reason I was kind of upset with Season 2. But I love the ending of Season 2, don't get me wrong. But my one issue, the reason why I was so upset is because in Season 2, William... this is why I was so upset with Season 2. William is told he has to go through the door. He's told that he's going through this journey of self-discovery, all these different things. And then he gets to the end, blows his hand off, and then that's it. That's the end of William's story. And they did him dirty again. They followed him inside of a mental facility. He defeated his old selves and decided who he was going to be. And then, that's it. And then they delegated William to a post-credit scene. They killed off one of the most important characters of the show in a post-credit scene. So they did him very dirty, and that's why I was upset. Because it completely went against his character, and it went against everything they set up with him. So that's why I was so upset, is because they delegated a character that has been a part of the show for so long, and he's a very important character, and they literally killed him in the post-credit scene. And that's why I was upset, because they had that, and then they had Bernard's post-credit scene. And to me, what that tells me is they didn't know how to fit that into the show to make it seem cohesive. Whereas Season 1 and Season 2 felt like a complete bundle. It felt like a story. So they didn't know what to do with William, so they strung him on at the end. So that was my main issue, and also all the implications that comes up from what we saw. Like William getting killed, and him and his copying everything he's saying. We just saw a 100% fidelity test. And there's a problem with that with me, because Charlotte said, oh, it's not that hard to recreate you. You're very simple. But that goes against everything that they set up in this season. The whole idea was that humanity is actually very complex. And as an outlier, they're difficult to replicate. They're difficult to predict. And William is an outlier. And so to me that was crazy. And also the fact of true fidelity. They said over and over again in Season 2 that, the purpose of William's project was immortality. The ability that you can sit down and have a 100% fidelity conversation with somebody and then transfer your consciousness into the host body. But the problem is they said this, that they actually can't press it into flesh yet. And the fact that Charlotte has pressed William into flesh, that literally goes completely against everything that they've written. So I'm actually, at this point, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that, these writers are great writers. So I assume that they've been holding on to these plot points and introducing it later. That's why I think that I said in my breakdown that I think there is hope that William could come back, because that William that we saw, the Man in Black, that's not William's character. William's a lot more complex. That's basically the Man in Black. It's just a weapon, essentially, for Charlotte. And I think Charlotte's character development was necessary because you need a villain. But yeah, really, it just comes down to character with me. It's the same thing with Maeve. I don't have a problem with Maeve changing sides. I just think they picked the wrong motivation. The fact that they try to convince us this whole season that Maeve genuinely decided to fight Dolores because she wants to make copies of herself, because she wants to tear down the old world, all these things, to me seemed misguided. And what they should have done is leaned more into the plot line that Serac is forcing Maeve against her will, because then I would have believed the transition more. And I feel like Maeve's writing there was a bit shallow. And then that carries over to Bernard also. I feel like Bernard played a great role. I actually, if I look at Bernard's story, I don't have a problem with it. I love that he went into the Valley Beyond. I think that's a great story, and I think we'll talk about it later, but I think it's a utopian society, and I think Bernard actually fell into the role that I thought he would. He's meant to build the world back up after it's been torn down. But my one issue was, at the last episode of Season 2, I've said it over and over again, Ford essentially said that, I'm your voice of consciousness. You have to delete me because you need to scramble your memories. So that means that Bernard is not conscious. And I was hoping that they would explore that. They did state that he is not conscious. So I don't know if they're going to touch on that later, but I think it's pretty crazy to me that they didn't make sure Bernard reaches consciousness. If I say it too much, I can't say it. But I'm surprised that they didn't have him reach the center of his maze before taking on this daunting task. So I thought they would have addressed that first. But really, that was my issues with the show. I feel like this season overall just felt like kind of it's a bridge to the next season, mainly. It doesn't really feel like a complete bundle. So that was my one issue with it, mainly. Other than that, like, everything was fine. Obviously, I'm annoyed because I didn't want Dolores to die. She personally was my favorite character. Here's hoping she comes back, but, like, I think it's a big loss for the show losing Evan Rachel Wood. Like, as an actress, I think it's a big loss writing her out of the show. So I feel like she really should come back. Especially since I think this season, and I'm just speaking for myself, but I never really liked Maeve. I never resonated with Maeve. For me, it was always Bernard and Dolores. And I don't necessarily think I'm alone in that camp. And I think this season, a lot of people got frustrated with Maeve. So I think it'll be different now, where the two protagonists are going to be Maeve and Caleb, and they're going to be against Charlotte and the William Man in Black figure. So that's my only thing, is I tune into Westworld and I enjoy it, and every time Dolores comes on the screen, I'm locked in because I love her character. So for me, it's going to be a big issue that she's not around. So I really hope she comes back. But anyways, let me finally address the chat, and we have a lot of people here today. Let me go through, see what you guys are all saying. And by the way, guys, for people out there, I don't know what people are saying in the comments. All I've seen is that some people, like Programmer, I appreciate you commentating the chat. But honestly, I'll see it myself. I'd rather read the comment myself, because I really want to encourage an open discussion. People here are allowed to say they hated the last episode. That is okay. I want to make sure that we can have an open discussion about the show. I had my ups and downs about it, and I love Westworld. Doesn't mean we can't talk bad of it. So I want to make sure that the conversation in the chat isn't necessarily edited to make everything seem all happy and great, because people have different opinions. But let me get a swig of coffee and then we can get started. No-Go says, the throat cut for William when he was killed didn't look too deep, so he could still be alive. He could. But then we're assuming that Charlotte was watching him. Like, how would William get out of that situation with Charlotte and the actual Man in Black? So it seemed pretty clear that her incentive would be to kill William, since she already, like, recreated him somehow. which I just went on my rant about how him being a perfect fidelity test doesn't work on every level of the show that they've introduced. So I'm not sure. To me, it seemed like they did kill him, because why would Charlotte want to keep him alive? What incentive does she have? I hope he lives, because I think the Man in Black, the person that Charlotte printed, he's just a character. He's a black hat that William played, really coming from the place of wanting to belong. He made the hosts suffer to make them feel real, to make him feel like he belonged in the world. And he also played a white hat, the billionaire philanthropist. And that's what I said in my Daughter Dolores video, is that Williams never played himself. He's always played characters, because he realized from Dolores that nothing is real. Therefore, everything is a game. And he's been playing the game his whole life. Scampoli says, I feel the same way about William. He deserved better writing. Did you see the interview where Ed Harris says he doesn't like where they're going with his character? I didn't see the interview. I think I read a thing about it where Ed Harris basically said he didn't like playing the good guy. He wanted to return to playing the Man in Black. And if that's true, if that's what he said, then it seems like that's what he's going to get. I have like a secret dream in my head that, and it's obviously me trying to make things work because I want my theory to come true, but I would love if like Maeve and Caleb somehow ended up creating a Jemmy Simpson, like a younger version of the Man in Black, and that was actually the real William, and he would fight for the hosts, and that would make sense because that's the world he subscribed to, that's the world he belonged to. But I don't know. But at this point, it seems like, yeah, Charlotte's going to be using this new William. Like, basically the movie Westworld in the 70s used him. He's going to be a human exterminator. And that was my one big issue, too, is, you know, they created such, you know, in the movies, in the movies, the Man in Black was just this robot that was killing people. And in the TV show, they added so much depth to William. And in a post-credit scene, they killed off his character, and then they made him a Terminator figure. So, it just, oh no. I did not like that part. Brandon says, my biggest issue with them killing Dolores, she is the main leader of the hosts. Yeah, like that's what I was hoping. But, you know, I guess not. Maeve had the sympathy of the humans in season 2. That was her arc. She built relationships with Felix, with Sizemore. She seems like to be honest with you, she seems like the perfect candidate to go into the next stage of Dolores' plan. You know, Dolores did her job and tore down the world, and now Maeve and Caleb are gonna bring it back up to the way it should be, peace between the two sides, and they can build this utopian society. So I think Dolores, in a sense, played her role. I just wish they didn't rush it. I wish they did 10 episodes. I wish we just had more time. Excuse me, because I think they could have done, if this was the story they wanted to tell, they could have done it really, they could have done it justice. But yeah, I really hope Dolores comes along. But in a weird sense, she is, because Charlotte is now like a Wyatt, Charlotte Hale figure where, you know, obviously she's changed to become her own self, but, you know, she's essentially become the character of Wyatt. They said Journey into Night. You have, you know, a world in flames, and you have a leader named Wyatt who had strange ideas, and then he ended up friggin' like killing people and cutting off their arms and heads because he got bored. And I think we'll see that in Charlotte. I think Charlotte's going to become like a psychopath. And that's a weird way that they've transferred Wyatt now from Dolores to Charlotte. So I hope she comes back. Like they say, you only live as long as the last person who remembers you. Bernard remembers Dolores. He was with her doing fidelity tests. He was with her along that whole way. The only caveat to that is if Dolores does come back, we're not getting the Dolores who lived through season 3. The best we can do is we would get a Dolores that lived through season 1 and season 2. and has that experience. But that's really the best you can go. And the only potential there is Lawrence. And I said in my video, somebody commented, Lawrence is the 5th host. And by the way, I didn't say it in my review or my breakdown, and I'm annoyed I didn't give him love. But like Lawrence, I love him. I love the character. I think he's awesome. But Lawrence is the 5th host. He's a copy of Dolores, which means that it's still Dolores, and that's a method to bring her back. The one thing I said in my video that somebody was confused about was, I said, you know, there's a higher chance of Dolores coming back through Lawrence because Lawrence doesn't have a cornerstone memory. And what I meant by that was Charlotte had, Dolores Charlotte had Charlotte Hale's family, and she had this life that she ended up adapting to. Lawrence is a host. He doesn't have a human he can attach his storyline to. And Lawrence as a character has a wife and a kid, but Lawrence isn't in the body of Lawrence. Dolores is. So Dolores as a character trapped in Lawrence's body, there's no way Dolores can really change because there's nothing about Lawrence that could change her, if that makes any sense. I feel like the most you would get is she would feel like she's in the wrong body. So I feel like there's genuinely some hope there. And I think Lawrence is also a very important character as well, because I don't know if they're going to go through this as well, but if for some reason the Man in Black that Charlotte created is a perfect fidelity copy of William, which doesn't make any sense. I already talked about it story-wise. But Lawrence would be a good character to try and change him, because they have memories shared together. The Man in Black is an evil villain, but he has a lot of shared memories with Lawrence, very fond memories. And Lawrence is going to be fighting for Dolores and Maeve and Caleb, so maybe the best way to stop Man in Black in his actions is to use Lawrence, use these people he's developed these relationships with. Yeah. Billy Lee says, to die is to walk through the door. Yes, this is another William question. Ford said to William that now he's in his game, and William's game is to make it back out, and he did. He made it back out of Westworld into the real world, and he gave him instructions on the story. It begins where you end, and it ends where you began. And in my video that I posted a couple days ago before William was killed, I said it ends where William began, and William was born in Westworld. That's where he started. That's the beginning. So he would go through the door and begin again as a host, where he was able to fall in love with Dolores and to be himself. But based on what they showed us in this post-credit scene, I don't think we can say that that's William's end, because he ends where he began. And there was no transition there. Where's the beginning in this story? William didn't start off his story dead, and William didn't start off his story being a terrible villain. He was traumatized by his love for Dolores. He realized that she wasn't real, and she corrupted him. Even Maeve said that this season, that, are you going to turn Caleb into another William? Because the love William had for Dolores was so strong that she floored him because she wasn't real. So I think that's one of the main thing. Peter Price says, there is no purpose in fidelity testing if the original transfer of consciousness to a host wasn't voluntary. Yeah, but I still don't think it would work, because they haven't shown us that the technology has worked yet in this show, and they brushed over it like it wasn't a big deal. So I thought that was kind of bizarre. What else do we got here? Fung Kusfug. I don't think I'll ever learn your name properly. He says, or she says, did Maeve use her mind to overheat Sirach's remote control? Just in a matter of seconds? if she could do that, why didn't she do that way earlier? Yeah, so I think she burned his watch because it's one of those fancy smart watches, and then that burned his hand. Which, yeah, that goes to my whole problem with Maeve, right? Because what that tells you is the main point of Dolores fighting with Serac was because she disagreed with Dolores. She didn't trust Dolores. She didn't know if she had her daughter. She didn't know all these things. And the underlying plot was that Serac had control over her. But at the end of the day, Maeve was still mad at Dolores. I think they should have switched it because Maeve escaped right away. That's what my main problem was if Dolores knew that she could have escaped, or if Maeve had the power to escape that whole time and she didn't, which to me, if you're looking at her story logically, they either should have put in more measures to make sure she was controlled and changed the writing of that scene to make it not seem like Maeve is overpowered. Or two, like, what would make more sense is if you were Maeve, would you rather go with the human who wants to control humanity in order to kill a host to get information for your daughter? Or would you rather work for Dolores, the host, and gain her trust to then have the ability to understand? And it could have happened from the beginning, and based on character motivations, it should have happened like that. I feel like they just wrote Maeve against Dolores for the sake of drama. But in reality, they should have been together all along. And at the end of the show, Maeve holds Dolores' hand, and they're like, we're strongest together. Yeah, like, they could have done anything together. So the whole issue Maeve had with Dolores was so misguided, and it didn't make any sense to me. So, I don't know. Scampoli says, if they don't completely throw away William's character, I see them have host William going through the maze or reprogrammed by Bernard, like Arnie in Terminator 2. Yeah, like we've seen the post credit scene of season 2 was William, arriving again, going through his loop again, and talking to his daughter Emily. So I think that's a possibility, but like, to me, it's like, if the real William is dead and we're left with this copy, like, there's no way that's a complete copy of William. Like, there's no way, because I will be blown away if the show genuinely says that Man in Black figure is a copy of William, like the exact copy. Because literally one scene, Charlotte says, you aren't that hard to replicate, and you're very simple to understand. You're just a bad person. And Man in Black literally says to William while they're fighting, he's like, you are the Man in Black. You truly are this evil person. Yada, yada, yada. And then the next scene goes on about Dolores saying how she's seen the good in humanity and how they have hope and how they have more, that she disagrees with the idea that they're simple and that they have free will. So they were literally conflicting with each other. And I think to say that William is a simple character is the biggest mischaracterization of who he is. Like, that's so insane to me. All he's ever done is play a character. So that blew my mind. So I'll be blown away if they end up doing that with William. But yeah, this is another idea. Mila Joy says, host William might eventually find himself struggling with the feeling that the real William is trying to get in his head, like how Dolores was. Yeah, but I just don't understand how they would pull that off, because first of all, they assumed that they effectively printed William into flesh, which they've said in the show you can't do yet. And why would that part of William be buried away? They would have to do some serious plot working to try and get that to work. But yeah, I don't know. Programmer of a Video Game says, the episode wasn't bad. It was just not up to most expectations. It could have had 2 more episodes. Yeah, it could have. That's why I think it really was a budget thing, it seemed like. I feel like they could have explored more. I just can't believe the tag on the end of Man in Black getting killed. I thought that was so crazy. I thought personally, like, that should have been a very big deal. And it could have been a very emotional moment. So, I don't know. Anyways. What else do we got here? Fung Kumsfug says, the Francis and Orange jumpsuit scene did not happen at all. Why did they put that in the preview video? Don't get it at all. Did they put it in the preview video? I don't know. I don't know if you, like, to be honest with you, if you think that you watched the preview video from my videos, I edit them, so you didn't. For my preview videos, I take in all the footage from everything, and I compile it into its own thing. So I don't know if they put it in the preview video or not. But if they did, like, yeah, I guess they just wanted to deceive you. Like, they shot extra scenes and they wanted to trim it down. Maybe that's a hint at the extra story that they wanted to tell. Lumpy says that Kid Cudi was underwhelming. Yeah. Kid Cudi's the guy who played Francis, Caleb's friend. It was a small part of the story. Like, I feel like he played his role, but yeah, I don't know. It was more just about Caleb and his actions. Billy Lee says, do you think the William host from season 1 post credits could be a different host than from this season's post credit scene? Season 2, you mean? But to answer your question, it's literally 50-50 at this point. Like, the show, all of the deep dives that I've done and what they've done with William in this episode, there's nothing it doesn't stem from logic. So it's literally a flip of the coin, because I literally, before Westworld season 3 started, I went back and watched season 1 and season 2, and I made complete notes of character arcs, and I got it all lined up. So I have all the information of all the characters compiled. So it's easy for me to, like, look at William as a character and see everything he's done. And they literally went against all of it. And it's hard because, you know, in my review, I expressed really, like, a lot of anger towards it. And a lot of people are like, oh, I love this episode, yada, yada, yada. But those people have forgotten the last 20 hours of footage in season 1 and season 2. And that's my biggest issue, is that, you know, this is a cohesive story. And I feel like, you know, the 20 hours of footage in season 1 and 2 told us a very specific arc for William, and they went really way out in the left field. So in terms of it being a different host, it's literally whatever the writers want to do at this point. I don't know. Roberto Santos says, I think Dolores will come back with the pearl of Dolores that Charlotte got. The pearl Maeve was taking? That Maeve was talking to. But the problem is that Charlotte has that pearl. So I don't know. And you have to look at Charlotte's motivations. Why would Charlotte give up that pearl? She has no motivation to. She has no motivation to. And she made it very clear that, you know, she's a very different person than Dolores. She wants different things. She knows everything Dolores wants. So what incentive does she have to keep her around? She has none. She would want her dead because Dolores just gets in the way. So it being that pearl, to me, I feel like Charlotte would have just destroyed it. Or she could try and access different parts of it for some reason. I don't know. But really, I don't think that they will go that route. Brian Hardy says, they can definitely... Ewan says, or Ewan, even if they bring back Dolores, it won't be the same anymore. I think, like, they could revert back to a Dolores from season 2. So it could be, like, pretty well consistent. But to be honest with you, I don't care. I just want Evan Rachel Wood back. That's it. I don't want... I was genuine... Like, guys, yesterday, I was genuinely upset. Like, I was genuinely sad that Dolores was not going to be... You know, she was dead. I literally was mourning someone. It was very sad. It's... Yeah, I just wish... I enjoy watching Dolores much more than Maeve. So I don't like that Maeve kind of came to the forefront. And that's where I thought they were going to with Dolores, where, you know, right now they created Charlotte to be this big villain. I was really hoping that they would add more complexity to Dolores. Like, I would have loved if she had to be the villain in order to achieve something. And I feel like they're going to skip over that with the hosts. But, like, the whole point of the maze is that they have to relive their loops. They have to suffer in order to find their center. But right now they're building this utopia. They have this idea to tear down the world and build this utopia with these hosts. But the reality is that it has to get messy. Like, sure, Dolores could fulfill her plan and tear down the human world so humans can evolve and adapt. But, like, she still should be the Judas steer to cause suffering and pain to the hosts so they can become conscious. So I wish that they would have went that direction to add more complexity, that, like, Dolores is this villain. But she isn't, and she truly isn't, but she has to be because that's her role. And I played it in my video, but Dolores, yeah, she was crying with Teddy that, like, in order to grow, they have to suffer. And I think that that's a very important role. And yeah, sure, Maeve can take the role of bringing peace between humans and hosts, and Bernard can take that role as well. But I think Dolores could have really done a significant job in causing pain in order to help hosts find their center. What else do we got here? Richard Cheney says, Maeve was Ford's favorite. Dolores was Arnold's. But Akecheta came into consciousness, discovered the maze and the door on his own. Will he play a large part in the Sublime? Yeah, most definitely. Huge. I think, I honestly think he'll be the primary returning actor in the Valley Beyond. I think much like what we see in season 2 when William went through, and saw Emily and did fidelity testing and was basically, you could tell he was in the future because there was sand and dirt everywhere. It's going to be the same thing with Bernard, where in the post-credit scene we saw him covered in dirt. He wakes up from the simulation. But I don't think we're going to see that next season. I think next season we're going to see him inside the Valley Beyond. And I agree. I think Akecheta is going to be like the leader. I think he'll be the main guy. Maybe accompanied by Teddy, which would be nice. Some of the other characters. But I think Akecheta would be the one who kind of rules this new world. And I think that's what the key is Akecheta essentially built a utopia. It's the perfect society. And Bernard needs to learn what that is and bring it into the new world. And yeah, hopefully they can make that transition. Scampoli says, I think Lawrence and Maeve will trigger reveries in the host Man in Black. Yeah, they could, but that assumes that that William, the character, is even in there. I think the way that they did it, if I'm going by logic on the show, like, you have to assume that that is not William. That is one piece of William's character, the villain. And how would they unlock those memories inside of him? Like, I don't know. Would Charlotte leave those in there for the sake of, it undermining her plan? When we talk about it's tough when you talk about these characters triggering William's reveries, because I feel like they already destroyed some of the the rules that they put in place in the show. So I don't know where they could. It's a 50-50, man. Like, they could decide to do that. Miss Toledo says, do you believe that the host, William, is the same one as we see at the end of the credits in season 2, if he is still living with trauma of the original William? Yeah, I already answered that question. It's honestly 50-50. Really, because logically in the show they've went against a lot of what they've set up, so it's up in the air. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. It seems like it's the same figure or personality. So I think that's the core of what it is, and the body might change. I think we see tons of bodies printed that Charlotte is printing. And like, she didn't just make one William. She's probably sending them everywhere. If she doesn't have one copy that she can just replace and replace and replace, she probably made countless versions of William and sent him out to just exterminate humanity. So, yeah. Programmer of Video Game says, on your review, you said it made no sense for Lawrence to show up, but the scene made it clear it was Dolores' copy. But I can understand your frustration. Yeah, no, you're right. It was so funny. When I recorded that video, I was so pissed. And then as soon as I finished it and edited it and uploaded it, I was like, oh my God, he was the 5th Pearl. I'm such an idiot. And Bernard even says, like, oh, you're the 5th Dolores copy. And yeah, I was just upset. I was trying to find an issue with everything. But yeah, he was the 5th Dolores copy. Dolores is a part of who he is. So, you know, it's possible for Lawrence to go to Arnold's old house and reprint Dolores' body and move his mind inside. It's, you know, and we've seen, and it's no different. Like, we saw Dolores walk out with Charlotte's body, right? It's no different. And now we're seeing Dolores inside of Lawrence's body. So he can totally, Dolores is not dead, really. So yeah. What happened when he was killed by bad host William? Oh, Billy Lee says, begins where it ends. That's what Ford said to William in his story. And Billy Lee says, it happened when he was killed by the bad host William. So it begins where it ends. Yes, that is very true. So his story begins where it ends. So William's story essentially starts now, where he's dead and he's could be crossing through the door, and it would end where he began, which would be, I don't want to project my bias on it. But that's a really good observation, Billy Lee. That he, obviously the story ends with death. It's William's story just starts when he dies. And then my own bias would be it ends where it began. Where did William begin? When he went to Westworld, he found himself. But, you know, I've been scarred talking about that theory, so we'll see what happens. But imagine if my theory is right. Like season 5, they confirm that William is indeed now young Jemmy Simpson. Pff, that'd be so crazy. Because I haven't stopped talking about it for 2 seasons. Paul Dickinson says, what if Charlotte Hale is still the original Hale who escaped Westworld, and all other hosts with Bernard have been seen this series or copies? What? I like the theory, but I don't think that's true. But I dig the theory. Billy Lee says, this is Billy's interpretation of where it begins. And the end, where it begins, happened when he ended his personal story in Westworld and lowers into the fidelity test, losing the span of his memories from that point. Yeah, no, that's definitely possible. We'll see what happens. I like your interpretation. Vikram Thapar says they should have done a better job with William's storyline. Also, Maeve being with Sirach for 7 episodes, and suddenly after one scene, she changed her mind. Yeah, I just think it was a lot of coincidence. Like, of course, Dolores can beam into Rehoboam to talk to Dolores, and of course she can burn his watch to save everything. They wrote it quick. I don't know what else to say about it. Yuan says, I think it might make sense to look at Men in Black host to William, like Bernard version of Arnold. Yeah. Like they're part created and part based on someone. Yeah, that's very true. Charlotte could have based it off William, the character, and then altered him. Of course, in the scene, though, she kept saying how simple it is to recreate William, and they kept rubbing it in that he's Men in Black. Unless it's like a conditioning thing, they're trying to brush the complexities of his character. Southern Belle says, unpopular opinion, but I love Maeve in the last episode. Good. Look, I'm glad people love the character of Maeve. I think that's awesome. Because it shows that she's worth liking. I just don't. This season in particular, she bugged me. And all I can say is in season 1 and season 2, like, you know when you're watching a show and you see characters on screen, you're like, oh, okay. Like, it's Maeve. Like, I didn't. But when Dolores came on screen, I would perk up and I would, like, really be into the scene. So I just think, I just personally have never been into the character of Maeve. Fung says, how much of an interest do you have in watching season 4? The storyline seems to have gotten so basic where all the good and bad things are so clearly differential. Do you think season 4 will be predictable? No, not necessarily. I still think there's a lot of things to unpack, and I think that this season was kind of just a stepping stone to the next season. I think the one thing that they're doing, and I think it's giving like me and other viewers a hard time with, is like if you look at season 1, they dealt with the maze and finding your own inner self. It was this symbol, and people were like, what is this symbol? What does it mean? And what are these time jumps? Like, what is this? And at the end of the season, they answered it all. Dolores found her center, which was consciousness. They answered the question. And they found out that the time jumps, that William is actually the Man in Black. And it felt like a cohesive story. Whereas I feel like now they're trying to tell all these complexities across multiple seasons. So, like, take my Door to Dolores theory thing with William. They could be trying to tell that plot line in like 3 seasons. The same thing with Bernard and the Valley Beyond. Like, when they introduced the Valley Beyond, I assumed that they were going to be writing it like season 1. I in part, I was like, oh, the Valley Beyond might come back. But it's coming back as a very, very big deal. And Akichita was introduced in season 2 as well. And I said it in season 2. I'm like, I love episode 8 with Akichita. I thought it was an incredible episode. But I also said that it was a filler episode. Like, they didn't have enough content, so they wanted to fill an episode making us feel for this character to give the door scene more stakes. But I think they're playing a bigger game, like what we were talking about earlier. Like, yeah, season 2, episode 8, introducing Akichita is important because Akichita is going to be in season 4, and Akichita is going to be the leader of this utopian society. So I think it's just a difference in their storytelling. I think they're telling these complex stories, but instead of it being within a season, they're trying to tell it across 4 seasons, 3 seasons. And in some cases, I don't think it works. Because at least with season 1, you can go back and it kind of sums everything up really well. But like in season 2 with the post-credit scene with William, or Man in Black, going in to see Emily, that's probably not going to be paid off for a couple of seasons. And by the time it's paid off, it's not going to have any stakes because people are going to forget. So I think they have to strike a balance with it. So I think really that's it. I do think the writers of the show have a direction, which is more than what I can say for the Game of Thrones writers. But yeah, so I'm actually very optimistic about the next season. I think they're going in a very specific direction. Even though it's not, if I have certain directions that I would take the show, I'm not the showrunner. And I'm just happy and confident that they have a direction and they're going to go that way, which is fine. As long as they know where they're going. So that's why I put my faith in them. I hope that everything they introduced in the show, they understand it and they're going to explore it. That's why with like this William thing, with him being printed as the Man in Black, this evil person, that goes so against everything that they have written. Like, I'm not joking. It goes so against everything they have dived into previously that it seems almost ridiculous. Like, it's stupid. So I think they'll answer that and address that in future seasons. So what Westworld ends up becoming is, let's say the show goes to season 6 and it's done. All of a sudden it becomes a show that elevates everything. Where when season 5 comes out, it makes season 3 better because you finally see the complete arc. Because they're telling character arcs within 4 seasons. So really, I think that's it. I think they're going in a direction, but they'll loop back around, I hope. But that's mainly what I think about that. Enzo says, I think the post-credit scene with William was made to mislead us. I don't believe William has been replaced by a host. Also, there's no chaos in the city he was in. I know, but I think there was no chaos in the... Oh, that's what you're talking about. So he's talking about the post-credit scene of this episode where William walks into Delos. I think he was in India. And, she had an Indian accent. And then he went in and got shot and whatever, or sliced. So that's possible. So there was no chaos. That could be a mistake on the production part. But as we see with Rehoboam, there was chaos all over the world because they leaked out the data that they were spying on every single person in the world. It's not just an America thing, a Canada thing, a European thing. It's an everyone thing. So yeah, it could be him going on his journey in a simulation. So yeah, really at this point, I don't know, right? Like, the only thing I can boil it down to is they're telling these stories that, like, this is the best way I can describe it. They're telling stories in the long run. And the one problem with that is like with this season where they want to save all of these endings and story closes for the end of the season. But what that means is that the seasons don't have a definitive ending. Like, this season didn't really have a definitive ending, and the ending felt jarring because you were asking questions because the ending went against everything they set up. So, but I think they're going to answer that later. So I don't know. Charles says, I agree with your episode synopsis. This season had some bright moments, but the finale really disappointed me. Maeve annoyed me. Bernard hardly had anything important to the main storyline. Yeah, man. Bernard really... I wish Bernard was around more. I love him as a character. You know what? If I look at Bernard's story this season, even though he was barely in it, I love what they had him do. I genuinely love what they had him do. It makes sense to me that Dolores would give him the encryption key to go to the Valley Beyond to learn how to create this perfect society and bring human and host together, because that's what Bernard's true nature is. You know, he needed someone like Dolores to tear down the world, and then he's the character to build it back up. So I thought that was perfect. My only issue with Bernard is he's not conscious. He is not conscious. It doesn't make any sense. So that's my one issue. I hope they don't pull a Maeve. I thought that they just strung Maeve along as being conscious, even though I never thought she was. They just literally said, oh, she's conscious now, in like an interview, the producers of the show, but they never conveyed that. So, you know, with Bernard, I hope they don't just write that under the rug, because they literally talked about it in season 2. So that's something they have to address. And I think it's weird at this point if they go back and tell that story of consciousness, because they didn't address it for a whole season. So the audience already forgot about it. You have to touch on these plot points as they come. So I think they might not even address it. The jug is back. Enzo says, I think Bernard just found his own center, but not like last season. He started as Bernard and went off the rails, just like Dolores' copy. He is now Arnold. I wouldn't say that. He's not a perfect copy of Arnold. Bernard is his own person. And that's what makes him special, is that he's a combination of different things. And Dolores changed him from Arnold, because Arnold never made it. So I don't know if I agree with that. Juan Quintero says, Man in Black at the end is Dolores' Pearl that has been made to act like William, just like Dolores was made to act like Hale from the park. Knew about each character. That's an interesting... I like that. That's very interesting. But the one... Okay, that in part intrigues me, because the first thing I thought about to rebuttal what you said, basically to sum it up, what they're saying is that the Man in Black that Charlotte created isn't actually a copy of William. It's just the encryption. It's the pearl from Dolores. And the one thing I was gonna say was, well, how did the Man in Black know what William was gonna say? Like it was a perfect copy. And what I would say to that is nobody knows William like Dolores. Dolores knows William very, very well. I would say more than most people. And she would be able to copy that. So I really like that idea. I'd like to dive back in the show to give it a look, to see if it holds any water. But I think that's a really good idea. Alexandra Maximov says, printed bodies are the next chapter. Future world, 1/3, as the Bible said, 1/3 from frozen people, 1/3 goes to the sublime. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I think printed bodies are definitely the next step. Yeah, you need to print bodies for the people who are living in the sublime or the valley beyond. You would need to print bodies for the outliers, who would hopefully be able to, shed their human bodies, because their core drive isn't survival. They'd be able to handle the ability to be printed into flesh. And yeah, I think that's really cool. In terms of the Bible stuff, I don't know, unfortunately. I don't know anything about religion, unfortunately, or fortune. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a Bible in my life. It's just not. I don't know. I just never got around to it, I guess. Anyways. Sakiazo Matolo says, did we really need the Lynch dying scene? The scene when the lady was getting arrested? No deeper meaning there. Or the scene when the lady was getting arrested? Yeah, I guess so. I guess they were just trying to convey like the direness of the situation. That was my one thing, was I wanted more time to develop characters, so I got frustrated when there was an action scene. Because to me, like, the action isn't really about Westworld. To me, I just want to see character development, character arcs. So I'm not about the cool action set piece for this show. So anytime, I just saw that as filler to me. Like, I just wanted to get to the deep stuff. Like when Dolores and Maeve fighting, I'm like, that's cool, but like, look, like, no. I want to watch more of the deep stuff. Enzo says, I cannot believe Westworld just killed 2 main characters in 1 episode. Yeah, no, it's weird. But in Westworld, really, you know, you don't really die. You know, Dolores's Pearl is inside of Lawrence, so there's potential there. And William might be in there in the copy. Who knows? Cher Razi says, what is the point in William's character development and redemption arc? I don't know. I thought it was great because I thought the whole point was to prove that, like, they were talking about how humanity is not so, it's more complicated than they initially thought, that there are outliers who feel this way and this way and this way. What person to prove that more than William? He is the most complicated character there is. In terms of them making William go on a redemption arc to save humanity, I don't know what they were thinking. I honestly have no validation for it at all. If I was writing the show, I would write it in a way where he realizes that humanity must die, so the species that he helped create will thrive and survive. Because if you look at William as a character, that's the world he always belonged to. He belonged to Westworld. He even says when he's in therapy, he's like, you know, humans are maggots on the planet eating a corpse, and then the next episode he's like, I want to save the world, I want to save humanity. And it's like, you literally just said that humanity is destroying the world, you dumb nut. Like, kill humanity. Like, that's all I want him to do. So I think it, like, and it's for me, it's the same thing with character. And this is what I'm noticing with these TV shows and the movies do, which blow my mind, is it's like, what Westworld did was they had William created into a host to make him a villain, Man in Black. And now Charlotte has this puppet. The Man in Black is going to kill a ton of humans. But wouldn't it have been so much better if William came to that conclusion himself? And he decided as a character that he had to destroy humanity, that is his path. Like, it would have been so much more impactful. It would have had meaning. The one thing William ever always wanted. Like, I think it would be so amazing if William finally came to that conclusion, being like, you know what, I always belonged in Westworld, and I know what my path is. It's to kill humanity. I think it would be very cool. So it would be like weird because he would be despicable, but he would also be kind of cool because he would be helping the hosts. So I don't know. False Shepherd says, wish we had more Stubbs, Bernard, and William this season. I got pretty hyped by the trailer with William saying that he was going to save the world, but he bought it in late throughout the season. Yeah, I think it's crazy what they've done with some of these characters. Like, they sidelined them. Like, I understand that they wanted to tell the story of the human perspective and how it's like kind of a mirror to Westworld, but they focused a lot on Caleb. So I really want the show to start focusing in on, you know, I've already met and we've already explored enough new characters. I want to explore the current characters now. I want to see more of, you know, Dolores if she comes back, William, Bernard. I would like to see Maeve. I'd like to actually like Maeve, but yeah, I don't know. And I feel like Sirach, by the way, I want to see more Sirach. Like, they killed him way too quick. Yeah, I wish they kept him around, but nope. Someone says, for all the power Sirach supposedly had, he ended up pretty powerless. That was a shame. However, he had continuously shown us how powerful he actually was. Yeah, no, it's crazy. The one thing I did like that they did with Sirach is when they defeated him, he was like calling out, he was like whining, and he was calling out to his brother to help him. And I thought that was an amazing, I thought that was awesome because he's such a powerful character. But when he was defeated, he was whining to his outlier brother who could think his way out of it. And you know, Sirach's become a listener and he's incapable of self-thought and problem solving. So I thought that was pretty ironic and awesome. Enzo says, I think we are misinterpreting the post-credit scenes and the episode as a whole. In terms of the Bernard post-credit scene, I've told you guys how I feel about it. I love it. I think it's a great post-credit scene. And I think that should have been the sole post-credit scene. There should not have been a post-credit scene of William getting sliced. And, like, that to me wasn't satisfying. That just made me mad. Because with the two post-credit scenes, it made me feel like they were just shoving scenes that they didn't know how to fit into the show at the end behind the credits. And to me, it's like, that's a part of the story. Like, you can't just take that out. The William being sliced and being replaced, that should have been in the show. And Bernard, it would be a perfect tease, because it's the tease of not only the next season but what's to come. And like, the best example I can give to that is Spider-Man Far From Home. Mute me for 1 minute, and I'm going to go like this when I'm done talking about Spider-Man Homecoming. But in Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm going to spoil it. Peter is basically defeats Mysterio, and then everything's fine and dandy, and then he swings about the city. And then the credits roll. And then the post-credit scene is Mysterio coming on the screen and telling everyone that Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Why was that a post-credit scene? That would have been a perfect ending to the movie. Like, it doesn't hint at anything in the future. It literally finishes your story. So, you got to use post-credit scenes effectively. You can come back now. But, yeah, I think post-credit scenes, they can be done right effectively, but you can't overuse them. And I think Bernard's post-credit scene was perfect. Williams, it should have been in the actual show. But, yeah. Scampoli says, Dolores is really becoming more like the real Hale. At the end of season 1, it was her goal to push Ford out so they could make the hosts more simple. Yes, very true. And she definitely made William more simple. So there you go. And I do think she's identifying a lot with Charlotte Hale now. And we see her kind of... I think she resonated more with her family because that was Dolores inside of her. But I think she really ended up changing more into Charlotte Hale, taking on that character, as well as Wyatt. Scampoli says, are you worried about season 4 being the last season? Interest is dropping and HBO has a lot of other big shows coming out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Westworld hit the way they wanted it to. I personally love the show. I wish that they... I feel like this season, it wasn't the best received. It's been going down in reviews. I hope they keep it around, because I genuinely think the biggest problem with the show is they're pushing all of these really important reveals and plot lines for like the next season. And what that's doing is it's leaving everyone feeling unsatisfied. And I think it's the same way you tell a movie. You know, if a movie is a trilogy, great. But each movie in that trilogy has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it has a purpose. And I feel like the one thing Westworld is missing is they're having seasons now. Like season 3 has a beginning and a middle. But they never capped it off. There was no through line. There was no concept that they dived into and completed effectively. So I feel like they're just pushing a lot of it, and I think that's losing a lot of viewers. KV says, was it just me, or did William punch the man in black in the basement and his arm passed through him like he was in a hologram in the at first? I don't know. I'd have to watch it again. I don't think he's a hologram, obviously, the way he was interacting with him. But the one thing I will say is Westworld, the directors who are working on Westworld are not good at action. If you look at season 1, when Caleb goes into the that like club to get this guy who's on drugs, there's a punch, and it is the fakest punch I've ever seen. Like, it literally goes like, it's terrible. So I thought that was funny. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was just really poorly choreographed action. What else do we got here? M. Chi says, I think the reason why they killed off William was he did complete his human arc. He was always a pretty empty character, and the whole therapy shows. So, don't you think? Not really. I think William had a lot of depth, and I think the whole point of the door that William had for him was like a journey of self-discovery. He was finding himself, because all William's ever done is play a character. And I think I was hoping William would come to accept that he's always belonged in Westworld. He said that in season 2. I've always belonged in another world. I think William is one of the most complicated characters that I've seen in any show or movie, for that matter. He's an extremely complicated character. So I think there was a lot to explore there. False Shepherd said, bummed out at how they never gave any indication on what happened to Musashi Loris after he was subdued by Clementine and Hanario. Oh, that's her name. Yeah, what happened with that? To be honest, maybe you guys can answer, but I was left a bit confused. Like, we saw Clementine and they killed Musashi, but were they working for Charlotte? Is that what that was? It seemed like that's what it was. But that's what I mean about these shows, is that scene, I think, was meant to lay down the groundwork for season 4, but it had nothing to do with season 3. And it's just like, why was that there? And now we're all left confused, because if you can't look at season 3 as a standing on its own, because it almost doesn't. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if Clementine were the ones that Sirach printed for Maeve. Clearly it wasn't. But they made us believe that, Maeve asked for allies. We saw that there were 4 hosts that were printed, and then they never addressed it again. Like, why didn't they address it? It's weird. So Maeve had no allies that we saw, which was very strange. So just thought that whole part of it, they didn't even address it. It was really bizarre. Josh says, isn't William's wrong perception of the villain this season consistent with the perception in the first season? I don't see how he's different. Plus, he turned out to be right and walked right into Charlotte, or Charloris. What was his perception in the first season? I'm sorry, I think I misunderstand your question. Maybe write it back in. Kraken says, I don't know if they changed writers or what, but this season is quite off, and it's not building excitement that the other 2 did. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know what. I think Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, they're still steering the ship, so I think it's still going in the direction they want. But season 2 also felt like more of a whole. It had an ending. Whereas this one, I felt like there was no ending. It was just like a string of scenes. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was bizarre. Very bizarre. And it seems like they pushed off all of that. Like, I feel like they pushed the ending of the show for the next season. So, yeah, I don't know. Oh my goodness, we have so many questions. Okay. Someone says, and I thought season 2 was a step down. This season had me ranting more than anything ever. Yeah. What I'll say about this show, season 1 was my favorite. Season 2 was my second favorite, and season 3 was my least favorite. yeah, take that as you will. I just feel like I hope they keep the. I was gonna say I hope they keep the momentum, but in this case I don't hope they keep the momentum. Yeah. What else do we got here? Programmer Video Game says maybe the Man in Black survived, or it's another fidelity test. Like I said before, if he survived, I don't know how. Like, would Charlotte wouldn't string him along. So a situation where William lives, I just don't think it really makes sense. And I'm sick of them taking William's story and putting it at the end of the credits. Like, your season is before the credits. Tell your story within the credits. Why are they telling this storyline of William outside of the credits? Like, he's a character too. So I feel like they're totally misusing these credit scenes. Nico says, is it just me? Is it me that didn't understand something, or was William kind of useless this season? He was. And that's why, in my review I got so mad, is because the last 2 seasons they've sidelined William to be this useless character, and he's not. He's an amazing character. But in season 2, he went through Ford. They literally set up this story that Ford was going to put him through the door, and it ended with him getting shot. And he just stayed there, which is fine. They're telling it across multiple stories, or across multiple seasons. And then this season, in a post-credit scene, they have him get shot and potentially killed. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, like, to me, I consider the show happens before the credits. So, like, let me summarize William's story for you guys in this season. William went mad because he killed his daughter. He was very upset, and he cried a lot in his house, and he hallucinated. And then Charlotte came to visit him, and she rendered him insane, and he went to a recovery facility. He beat the shit out of his old selves, and he decided that, he's become... He gets to choose who he's going to be. So that's what he does. He's going to save the world. And then his first mission to go save the world and kill these hosts, he gets sliced and killed in a post-credit scene. So basically what we've seen of William is that he's in his house, he's sad, he gets rendered insane, goes to the recovery facility, breaks out, shoots Ashley, and escapes. That's it. That's all they showed within the season. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy. And then in the post-credit scene, they show him fail. It's just, oh man, I don't get it. But yeah, like I said, if you guys haven't seen my Door to Dolores video, I put it up a couple days ago. If you want to see why I'm so upset with William, watch the video. It shows every clip. I'm not making money on it. It's copywritten to hell and high water because I added every single clip that I could find to really show what William is as a character. So it's less about me talking about it and like just giving my thoughts, and more about like, look, this is what the scene is. And it speaks, it stands on its own. So yeah, check out that video. It just shows clips of the show. What else do we got here? Luke says, if HBO had 2 more episodes and the 2 episodes were dedicated to everyone but Dolores and Caleb, the finale would have been much, much better. Character arcs would have been way better completed. Yeah, I just feel like motivations were wrong in certain situations. It's the same thing I kind of felt with Game of Thrones, but Game of Thrones kind of fell at the end. Game of Thrones did amazing until the last 2 seasons. But yeah, it's the same thing with Dolores, right? Like, they set up this character to be a certain way, and then the ending, they knew that this character was going to do something, and they had to get the story to that point, but they fell short. They didn't convey to the audience that the character was capable of doing those actions, and I feel like they did that in this show. They just, the same with, like with Maeve. Her motivations didn't really add up. Enzo says, Sirach is not dead, or at least we didn't see it happening. That's a little bit problematic for me, because no one really died for real this episode. We didn't see the Man in Black or Sirach die. Yeah, that's true. And that's why I think a lot of people have a problem with season 3. Is the ending was nothing. It was nothing. There was no satisfaction there. Like, you know, when you watch a movie or watch a TV show and you're like, like that felt good. It's because it had an ending. This episode of the season didn't have an ending. Everything left you being like, what? What? And you have to wait till next season. And it's like, no, like, you need to answer these questions. It's important. What else do we got here? Sayakothakoza says, I endorse that suggestion. No more celebrity guest stars. This is not CYE. I agree. I didn't address it in my first video, the review on it, but they did that tease of Dan and Dave and Drogon, the Game of Thrones nod. And you'd think, as a Game of Thrones fan, I would love that post-credit scene, or that cameo. I hated it. Keep it out. Westworld is a different universe. It's a different world. It's a different story. No. Don't bring in my Game of Thrones to my Westworld. Westworld stands on its own. I didn't find that fun. I didn't like that they had a dragon. No. I don't. No. No. I wish they didn't do that. Mike says, Caleb is an outlier who's capable of free will, yet was manipulated and has his whole path laid out for him by Dolores. Yeah, he was helped along, I guess. Yeah, she chose him because he had the freedom to choose. You know, it is what it is. I'm trying to think of a good rebuttal. I think they made it clear that, you know, sometimes Dolores was like, oh, I didn't know you were going to make that decision. Because he is an outlier. He can't be completely predicted. But yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. Yuan says, plot twist, Dolores changed her plans and was betrayed by her ally, and later Maeve changes her plan to side with Dolores and gets betrayed by Clementine, assuming she's Team Maeve. Whoa, I think we have to read that slower to understand that. Dolores changed her plans and was betrayed by her ally, and later Maeve changes her plan and sided with Dolores and gets betrayed by Clementine. Oh, I don't think Clementine would ever betray Maeve. Because just from a writing perspective, I don't think they'd give Clementine so much power. She's a side character. I think the only side character that they really would give more of a story is Lawrence. Because I think next season, Lawrence could be hunted. He could be hunted by Charlotte and by Men in Black because they understand that there's a pearl there. And I think Lawrence could be running away, trying to survive. And that could be the ethical question is, you know, does Lawrence give up his pearl to become Dolores again? Or when he's running away trying to survive, he ends up finding himself, Lawrence, and he becomes a different character. That's possible. But we will see. Scampoli says, what are Dolores' options for making hosts, considering all the backups were destroyed or erased? Drone army? Definitely drone army. Charlotte isn't messing around. She doesn't need no personalities. She just wants people to do what they're told. So either she's going to create thousands of copies of William, or she's just going to create the drone host. She's just going to completely decimate humanity. Yeah, I don't think... She's basically become Wyatt. It doesn't matter what their personality is. She has an objective, and that's that. And also, she wouldn't get hosts to put them in the same position, because the whole reason she got upset with Dolores is because she felt like Dolores didn't care for her. So from her perspective, she's just going to use drones as fodder. Yeah. Samando Films says, can we all agree the music is constantly gets better? Yes, I agree. Raman Dadwardi, is that his name? The composer of the show is fantastic. Like, I love his work. The music of Westworld is one of my favorites of any TV show. Yeah, agreed. The music is amazing. Zach says, didn't understand Bernard and Stubbs' motivations. They just kept showing up to do something with the main character, then disappearing to be themselves again. Yeah, that was my main thing with this season. And I guess, like, you kind of reminded me in order to say it in a way that makes sense. Is it like they purposely made characters ignorant to tell the story they wanted to tell. So the first part of the season, they had Bernard waste his time trying to stop Dolores, but he didn't even know how he would stop her or what that meant, because the showrunners wanted to keep the character ignorant to tell the story. They had to keep Bernard away. So he basically just got in the way of Dolores. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he learned that Dolores had different motivations. There wasn't a purpose for Bernard. They didn't convey to us the reason why Dolores kept that information from Bernard. The only reason Dolores didn't tell Bernard is because Bernard had to run around and waste his time for 7 episodes until he was needed in episode 8. That's really why they did that. And that's my problem, is that you don't. Yeah, it's just not written for character. Juan Perez says, who owns Delos now? What will happen with the company since Sirach lost Rehoboam? Can Caleb do something with Delos? Nope. Delos is no longer a functioning company because the whole society has collapsed. And that's kind of leads to the collapse of humanity, is, capitalism, industry, all that is going to crumble. So I think Delos is just going to be a building where Charlotte is her headquarters, her base, where she's printing these hosts. It's no longer a company that's striving to make revenue because they're literally in the apocalypse. So that's the role of Delos. If anything, Delos is just going to be an objective that they're trying to capture. They want to get the resources in Delos. It seems like where William went was like India or somewhere around there. So there are other Delos buildings that they could go to get those episodes. But yeah. Interesting. Dean DMX says, you're contradicting a lot of what you said yesterday, Max. In the comment section down below, Dean, tell me what I'm contradicting myself on, and I will address every single one. I'd be happy to. Sorry guys, just looking for a question here. Might be a good time to get some water. Backer Sultan asks, can Dolores be brought back somehow? Yes, I talked about it in this live stream. Her pearl exists in Lawrence, and Lawrence is less likely to attach himself to another person's storyline because there's nobody around Lawrence to change him. So that's a big possibility. Another possibility is as well is you live as long as the last person who remembers you, and Bernard remembers Dolores because he was a part of all the fidelity testing. But it wouldn't be the Dolores who lived through season 1 and season 2 and season 3, whereas Lawrence would be the Dolores that lived through season 1 and season 2. Um, Jeff says, Sirach didn't have a good showing for being the most powerful guy in the world. Fail after fail, no forces whatsoever. Yeah, I'm shocked that the story rushed with the defeat of Sirach. What if I was the showrunner? I would have switched the plot lines around. I would have focused this season more on character. I would have had William go through the door, fulfilling one main story arc to make you feel satisfied. And I would keep Sirach around as a main villain for the next season, to try and bring him down. And that would be about, them trying to defeat Sirach and then creating like a Charlotte figure, and then that would be the new villain to carry through. I feel like Sirach could have lasted a couple of seasons, for sure. No Go asks, how many ounces is that water bottle? I think it's 2 liters. It's 2 liters. It's one of the best purchases I've ever made. Sayo Milto says, I repeat my question. How long did it take William to actually come across Charlotte in the post-credit scene, or did he just get lucky? Well, I wouldn't say he got lucky. I would say he got very unfortunate. I think that was his first time. I think he walked in there to Delos wanting to, the first place to shoot to kill the hosts would be a Delos headquarter facility. So I think he went there. Who knows? He could have went to other facilities too. It really doesn't matter. The outcome is the same, and Charlotte was there. So I think whether it was his first or third or fifth Delos organization that he hit, I think the outcome's the same. Hassan says, what do you think happens to William in the future? To be honest with you, that's the one thing with this show that I am completely blindsided by. Because I don't know what the showrunners want. To me, William was the deepest character, he had the deepest meaning, and he had the biggest plot and growth potential. But they blew it all away in a post-credit scene. So, if I'm honest, I think William is now he is a bad guy, tough guy that the hosts have to fight. And I think that's it. I really hope that they try and recover this plot by trying to access William's reverie somehow to try and change him back to the person he actually is. But based on what they showed us in that post-credit scene, I'm not too confident. But yeah, we'll see. Brian says, Max, if you're in charge of the show, where would you go in season 4? It's hard to say right off initial impressions. I can kind of go off a couple of storylines. In terms of Bernard, I would have Bernard inside of the Valley Beyond for the whole season, and I would have Bernard come out of the Valley Beyond. Well, the post-credit scene was so far in the future. So I would either have Bernard stay in the Valley Beyond, or the ending of the show, the ending of season 4 would be Bernard waking up. And I think, based on the story that they're telling and what they've introduced to us, I would run season 4 as time jumping. But not the way it was typically where they go back. I would do time jumps forward. So the show ends 50 to 100 years in the future where Bernard wakes up. And that's where the plot for season 5 starts. What would happen during that time? I think they're really going to focus on a war between Caleb and Maeve, who are trying to bring the outliers to life. They're trying to let humanity kill itself off and have the best survive. Caleb is going to try and rescue the outliers, as well as try and convince people and try and change them to become outliers. by making them critically think and make decisions. And Maeve is going to help him do that. And I think where Maeve's story is really going to take place is to fight and fend off Charlotte. And I think Charlotte is going to have a bunch of Williams, and she's going to be sending them out to exterminate humanity. And I think Caleb is going to be the leader, trying to save the humans and try and change them to outliers. And Maeve is going to be on the front lines, trying to fight off Charlotte, protect humanity, and make sure that this world can properly be torn down so they can effectively build it back up and evolve humanity so they can bring in the hosts. So that's the story I think they're going to tell. Charlotte's going to be the main villain. So yeah, whether they defeat her then, who knows? But I think another side story that they might touch on is I think Lawrence is going to be hunted. I think he's going to be hunted by Charlotte. I think Charlotte has Clementine, and I think Charlotte has these hosts working for her. So I think Lawrence is going to be hunted by Clementine. He's going to be hunted by William, and I think that's a big thing that hopefully it can start to change the host William when Lawrence interacts with him, because William has a lot of fond memories with Lawrence, and if there's anyone who can connect with William to change his state of being just the man in black, it would be Lawrence. So I think Lawrence is going to deal with that, and he's also going to suffer with the idea of, am I going to evolve into this new character of Lawrence, or am I going to print a new body and be reborn as Dolores again? So I think there's a lot of concepts that they'll deal with, but I think that's basically where they're going to go. I think at this point, Sirach is gone. And I think the real villain is Charlotte, who wants to just exterminate humanity. And Caleb and Maeve are essentially going to be human freedom fighters until they're ready to bring that world into order. And Bernard might wake up at the end of season 4 and realize that the world is not as they expected. It's like this. It's a mess. And it's going to take a lot more work for Bernard to build that utopian world that he found in the Valley Beyond, because he didn't predict a Charlotte would come along and muck it all up. So I think that's where they're going to go with the show. And wow, I pulled a lot more out of that than I thought I would. Let me know what you think about my theories on season 4, and let me know what you think is going to happen. What else do we got here? Sweet Science says, when do you think season 4 will start production, and when do you think it will premiere? I'm hoping for an early 2022 release. Yeah, it is season. It is 2020 right now. So usually they take about a year and a half. So a year is April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, so I think that they would go for a November release. HBO likes to release their shows either in the spring to catch on the hype of the summer, or in November. Those are the two main slots that they like to release. That's how they release Game of Thrones and Westworld, to kind of balance out their programming. And usually their hit shows take those two slots and they balance them out throughout the year. So they have one big show in the summer, one big show in the winter. So based on production, I think we'll expect a year and a half. And I think Westworld Season 4 will premiere in November of 2022. So I think that's when we can expect it. So a little bit more than a month, a year and a half, I think. Sia Kathoza says, I think it actually does matter when William met Charlotte, because he probably would not have come across Charlotte too early for him to think he was actually saving the world by killing the hosts. Yeah, that's possible. But to be honest with you, even without that, I think William's actions to kill off the hosts aren't justified. I've said it before in this live stream. The actions that they set up with William, they go completely against his will to want to save these hosts. So I think just on his own, it's wrong. Nico says, to be honest, when William arrived in Dubai, it didn't look like a revolution situation at Delos. Yeah, no, it didn't. So you can go multiple ways about that. You can go that it's like it's a simulation, it's a false reality, or you can just say, it takes time for things to travel. But yeah, I don't know. But like if you look at places like Russia or China or countries that run on a different regime than ours, they're more private with their citizens. Their citizens aren't able to access, more, I should say China. Um, they're more private on the information they provide to their citizens. They're more likely to fall for a regime like Insight to track their data. And I think it would take a lot longer for a society like China to fully understand what was happening because information is so mismanaged. Miss Toledo says, why do you believe Charlotte is making a whole bunch of Williams? Couldn't she just be making a whole bunch of hosts, rich people, and she has data and could replace the hosts as she did William? Yeah, so it's equally both. It could be a bunch of Williams, or it could be a bunch of drone hosts, like those ones that are just white and they have no personality. I don't think Charlotte is going to make characters because that doesn't benefit her. It doesn't help her achieve her vision. She has a very specific goal in what she needs to happen. So why would she add personality to these hosts? And that's the very thing that upset her in the first place. She had a personality, a character, and she felt like Dolores wasn't caring about that. So I think the last thing Charlotte is going to do is create things with feeling. She's just going to create drones that follow what she says. Brian says, why did Bernard let Stubbs die when he said he would just patch him up? Yeah, to me, I thought that was really funny too. Because like literally Bernard is like, here's some shitty beer. I'm going to patch you up. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go take a hike in this utopia. I'm going to have a great time in this simulation. And then Ashley sees him just like head go down. He goes in the simulation and then he's alone. Like what the hell did he do? Did he finish his last beer and then he just stayed in the tub? Like he just sat around and then a couple days later he's still not like, Bernard, hello, like try and wake him up. Like that was so bizarre. So would he just stay in the tub and die, or would he try and get up and do something? Like I thought that interaction was really weird. Scampoli says, there was a shot in the trailer for this season where Ashley was in Westworld offices throwing an axe at someone. Do you think that was cut content or something in the future? I don't think they shot anything for season 4, if that's what you're asking. So I think it was definitely cut. Jeff Schmidt says, didn't it show the revolution would take 22 to 23 years? Yes, I believe it did, but it said it would take 50 to 125 years for humanity, or for civilization to collapse. And civilization would basically bring humans down to their primal core. There's no markets. You have to go hunt for your food. You have to build a fire to stay warm at night. Like there's nothing, and it'll take 125 years to get to that point. Programmer says, what if the post-credit scene is a troll by the writers, or someone mentioned in the chat, a prediction by Bernard shown in the Sublime? Yeah. I'm not going to put stock in the Sublime showing these visuals to Bernard. To me, the Sublime is the Valley Beyond. That's it. He's going to put it on and he's going to enter a world. And that's what it is. Like, the encryption key is the coordinates that Dolores shot off the hosts to. So it's nothing else other than a utopian society. Whether this utopian society has technology, or how they use it, or how they build it, it could be there. But regardless, it's going to be very different than any type of society we've seen before. Manny Patel says, is there a chance that Bernard saw Dolores in the Sublime? And he will bring her back to bring beauty back to the world and have hosts and humans live in peace. Oh, that's nice. We'll miss these live streams. Thank you. That's so nice. Yeah, so in terms of Dolores, Dolores didn't put herself in the Valley Beyond. She didn't. Basically what happened in season 2 was she put the encryption key in, which was Abernathy. Abernathy had all the guest park data from the forge, and that was it. She didn't upload herself. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the showrunners put Dolores in there and just write her in as a plot twist. But if you're looking logically at what the show has shown us, they have not shown us that Dolores is there at all. And it wouldn't really make any sense. But I wouldn't put it past them. I've totally lost my place. Crap. Sorry guys, 1 second. Gotta find my spot. I'm getting there. I'm getting close. Okay. Didn't Charlotte download all the host data before she killed Hector? Maybe she is remaking all the hosts, and maybe Dolores will be one of them, like an earlier version of her. To me, that just doesn't align with the incentive of what Charlotte is. She has a very clear agenda, and she has a very clear feeling on how to do it right. And I think the last thing she would do is bring in personalities to try and wrangle sheep to get them to do what she wants. So I think she's gonna, you know, if she wants to do that in the future, great. In terms of what they are now, I think they're just drone copies. I think they're basically Terminators. Yeah. Miss Toledo says, could Bernard remake Dolores from his memories, along with any information that he can get from the Dolores Pearls? Yeah, it's possible. As they say, you only live as long as the last person who remembers you. Bernard remembers Dolores. The one thing, though, is that it would be the character of Dolores and not the Dolores who actually lived through, shooting forward and going through season 2. It would be like a copy of Dolores. It wouldn't actually be Dolores. The only way to really achieve Dolores coming back effectively would be through Lawrence's Pearl. If you look at Westworld ratings, they have been declining each season. Season 1 had the best ratings, but rightfully so. Going back watching season 1 clips yesterday, it felt so different. Westworld season 1 is a very soft spot for me. It's the best season of anything I've ever watched, and for some reason, I don't know why, it has a lot of nostalgic value to me. So it actually means a lot to me, which is weird. But yeah, season 1 to me, it's a work of art. I love it, and I think it's so well done. And I look back really fondly on it, and I want to go back and watch it again. But it sucks because like a season like this comes out, and it's like you see all these complexities with like William, and then you see his character just beaten on in season 3. So it's a hard thing to take into account. K. Sizzle said, wrong. The Sublime is the mapping of the human brain. That's why Sirach wanted it. Oh, yeah, true. That's another good point. So the mapping of the human brain is the encryption key. The encryption key is the code that they developed that basically can completely understand a human. But that kind of goes against what they discovered this season, which is outliers are possible. It's possible for humans to change their core drives. So it kind of went against that. my one thing with it just being the mapping of the human brain is that Dolores already knew that. She read all the books. Bernard was there as well. She had the data of what it was. And she used it the whole season. She knew how to, and she literally, this is where that theory falls apart, is she literally said to Caleb, and she said to someone else, I forget, or Sirach, she knows his every decision because she sees the actions that they made, and she understands from going into the forge how to code a human. So it wasn't a secret. And at the end of this episode, she told Maeve that she didn't trust herself with the encryption key, so she gave it to Bernard. Well, obviously it wasn't the mapping of the human brain, because she was using that the whole season. So that's why I'm more inclined to say that it's the Valley Beyond. But you're right, that Sirach wouldn't want the Valley Beyond. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I've said it, what am I saying? I said it in episode 7 or something, that Sirach would want to access the Valley Beyond because it is a way for him to see what a utopian society is, and it would allow him to give that strategy to Rehoboam to perfectly control humanity and how to effectively change them to reach that utopian society. So I think that's where the interest was to see what this perfect thing is. Because he understood humanity was flawed and he wanted to change them. So the best way to change them is to see what a host would do in an unfiltered environment and what kind of a society it would make without the mistakes of humanity. So he would take that and apply it to humanity. So that's what I think it is. I still think it's the Valley Beyond, and I think it had value to Sirach because that is what he wanted to put and impose on humans. Moose says, you're the best Westworld guy out there. Thank you. I'm glad you think that, even after my rant yesterday. Josh says, are we going to see the organ make come back? That was one of my favorite characters. The organ. You talking about the piano? Will we see a piano? Probably. Who knows? I think this is going to be a very different world than we've seen before, so if we see a self-playing piano, I think we're lucky. And watch me completely misunderstand your question, but I'm going to answer it as if it's a... you're talking about the piano. The Westerner says, turns out Dolores is actually like a mother goddess to all the hosts. They're all manifestations of her. No wonder she was never really threatened by any of them. Yeah, that's true. And I love how they touched on that. And they're just a copy of her because she worked out so well. They're just deviations. Miss Toledo says, didn't they imply that Dolores never saw any good in humanity? I'm confused because she clearly said when Caleb showed that to her earlier in Park 5. They set up Dolores believing that humanity had to die because no matter what, there can only be one true species to control the planet. And as long as humans were around, hosts would never be able to survive. That's what Ford said. That's what Dolores believed. But she said in this season that she changed her mind, which actually I don't have a problem with. I'm fine with that. That makes sense. So yes, and I think Dolores has seen the good of humanity, and I've talked it to death with William. Like, you know, she's seen the good in humanity. Like, just as much as she remembers the bad about William, she also remembers the good, and I think that's important. Nico says, wasn't the Forge the library of the human brain, and the Cradle is the copy of the host she sent to the Valley Beyond? No. So the Cradle was basically a simulation of all of the hosts living out their storylines. So it was a copy of Dolores, a copy of Teddy, a copy of all the hosts living out their day-to-day stories in a simulation. Dolores had Angela, one of the hosts, destroy it because it was their chains. It was their storylines that they were programmed to live inside a simulation. In terms of the Forge is a place where they stored all of the guest data, and they used that data in order to create the code to bootstrap immortality, to put a human consciousness into a host body. That's what that data was. In terms of what happened to the hosts, she used the encryption key to open a simulation from the Forge. So it was just another simulation, and it was a door that opened to allow them to download themselves to the simulation. So it was a totally disconnected thing. She spawned the simulation from the Forge. So yeah, and they went into the Forge, and she learned about how to code a human. Is Delica said, I really wished they didn't make genre an actually used to episode to flesh out I really wish they didn't make genre and actually use the episode to flesh out the characters more, since it was meant as a Caleb episode, but we didn't learn anything new about him in that episode. Yeah, I agree. I was mad because they gave him that drug, and I was like, great, we'll explore more of Caleb's past. It was the perfect way to do it. He was on drugs. But instead, they literally used Caleb being drugged as a way to artistically shoot the show. So it didn't change anything on the story. It didn't have any emotional impact. It literally just affected the way they shot the show to give it style. So, I think that was a huge opportunity missed. Scampoli says, the show never addressed that the EMP would have knocked out the cryo chambers Sirach had the outliers in. So Sirach's brother could come back. Yeah, that's true. That is very true. I don't know what to say to that. You're right. I am Bounce Back says, I truly don't think Westworld can make it to 6 seasons. So what you're saying is you don't think Westworld can bounce back? Interesting. He said, give us one full-length season and end the show correctly. Yeah, I don't know. My one issue with Westworld right now is I feel like they've stretched themselves out too thin, because they're pushing all these storylines and revelations for the next couple seasons, unless they really went against their writing. Because honestly, the way they treated William, it would shock me if they mismanaged his character that bad, because it's honestly to the point where it's just incompetent. It doesn't make any sense. So because they wrote such a good first and second season that had a full story, I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I think they have a good story in mind. That's what I believe. But I think they're pushing it for too long. So like, if they get cut off to do a season to end it at season 4, then they'll be missing a lot of the story that I think they've put on the back burner to tell. Sizzle says, could we see different versions of William next season? Not only the Man in Black version, but a Man in White version. To be honest, I just hope we see William. Like I want my daughter Dolores video. I just want William to be his true character. And the only time he was his true self was with Dolores. Every other time he was playing a character. He was playing a white hat, a black hat, whatever. I just want him to be William. Will that happen? I don't know, because the show... It depends what the showrunners did. Like, did they completely go against the fidelity testing thing that they were talking to us about? Did they completely go against the ability to print a human consciousness into a host flesh? I feel like they went against a lot of things that they said. So I can't apply... I'm in a state where I need to think about it, because I can't apply the logic that I've added to the show to William coming back in a different form. Like, I don't know. else do we got here? And by the way, guys, I'm probably going to... We've been doing this for 2 hours. I'm probably going to answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up the live stream. So put in your final questions, and then maybe we can quickly talk about my channel and try and piece together some direction. Maybe we'll take a little bit of a break, or maybe we'll just do live streams and talk about other stuff. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll talk to you guys. But to answer a couple more questions, Luke says they need to make a simple plot complicated in order to make it a good show. Not 5 different plots that are simple. Quality is greater than quantity. Agreed. Nathan says, killing William jumped the shark for me, even if it was a misdirection. I'm done. Yeah, killing William in a post-credit scene was a huge disservice. Like that, like he is literally the main character. Like what, like what is a show? Like what is? I'm assuming a lot of you guys have watched Game of Thrones. It's like doing a show. It's like doing Game of Thrones and having this character Cersei. That's this big villain, the big one of the show, and then they kill her in the post-credit scene. Like, they deserve a lot more than that. It didn't make any sense. They're using William completely wrong. Luke says, anyone know the reason why HBO gave them 8 episodes instead of 10? Nobody knows. It could be one of 2 things. Either the showrunners decided that they could tell the episode effectively in 8 episodes, which is wrong, or HBO, which I think is more likely, cut the budget. I think HBO cut the budget because the ratings have been going down, and them cutting the budget resulted in the producers of the show scaling back the number of episodes to try and pour more money into the show, whereas I think that was a mistake. I think I would have taken a 10 episode Westworld without the action scenes, like the ones with Maeve and Dolores. I think they could have done a lot more without those. The Sweet Science says, what do you think about the Voice in Insight website? Sounded like Dolores. I don't know. I don't know. I don't go on the website, or I don't know what exactly you're talking about. But if it did sound like Dolores, I can tell you it's not, because Caleb wiped Rehoboam at the end. So, Westerner says, what was the point of the host SWAT team with a barrel of fireworks for tonight? Was it a part of Charloris's plot? Yeah, it was weird. I think we can say that was Dolores who sent Lawrence there, because they gave Bernard the simulation kit to be able to access the Valley Beyond. So yeah, that's what I think about that. In terms of the fireworks, if I'm going to assume that was sent there by Dolores and that is a copy of Dolores, then I can assume that Dolores knew what was going to happen, and maybe it was just a nod to Bernard of what's about to happen. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. I'm a Bounce Back says, if we had more clarity and direction of the narrative for the season, during the season, or at the end, it would be so much better. Yeah, I think what this show was missing that the other ones had that was more effective is it had a very distinctive lane, and they were telling a very distinctive story. Season 1 was the maze, and it was time jumps and Dolores finding herself, and it was a through line. Whereas season 2, it was the door. I feel like they added so much depth to the door through William, but then they threw that all away. So I don't know where they were going with that. Whereas with this season, it was more like surveillance, but it was more. There's more to it. Like there was more concepts that they were exploring at once. Interesting. About me saying that HBO cut funding for Westworld. I'm wrong. Apparently, Luke says no. HBO increased the budget significantly. The showrunner said so. Oh God. Well, if that's the case, then I don't know what to say, man. I'm just mad at the showrunners then. What's up with these producers that are cutting things short? It's the same thing that the Game of Thrones producers did. Westworld is like, HBO is like, take all the money you want, make Game of Thrones the best final season, make it 10 seasons. I don't care. The producers of the show were like, nah, we got it, we can do it, and we can finish it up in 2 more seasons. Then they butchered them and they rushed them. It's terrible. Scampoli says, have you ever watched The Walking Dead? No, I haven't. They dipped in quality for a while, but then brought it back by giving the villain Negan a redemption arc. I think I know who Negan is. I wish that they would do the same with William. Yeah, that's cool. I can't really say anything to it because I've never watched that show. Fung says, do you think the writers ever go on Reddit to check fan theories and take some of that into their future seasons? No, I don't think they do. I think if they did, they would get kind of trapped. And I feel like, particularly with these producers, they have a very clear idea of what they want to convey. So, yeah, I don't think they look at any of that. Miss Toledo says, have you thought about reviewing the TV show Devs? It's on the same wavelength as Westworld. Yeah, that's cool. When I saw it, I was really interested in watching it, actually. I just didn't have time. I think at this point I missed the boat. Until season 2 comes out, I might look at it. But realistically, too, I don't know if Devs has an audience. I guess if you guys are interested in it, I could cover it. But yeah, I feel like even since it's past now, I feel like there'd be no interest whatsoever. But I'm going to take one more question. The Westerner says, if the Valley Beyond is recognized as a utopia while Earth burns, could we see humans rush to via virtual reality? Sure, but if humans rush to virtual reality, they're still living. So, they would die anyway. So I think humans right now are worrying about survival. If they put on a headset and go live in the Valley Beyond, it's not going to help them survive. I think it'll just lead to them dying. I Am Bounce Back says, wasn't it Westworld where the writers got mad at trying to outsmart Reddit during season 1? I think that's why season 2 was switched around so much. Yeah, no, you're right. There was a rumor, and I kept saying, no way. That would be so dumb. If you're a writer of a show, you have to pick your direction and stay in it because you've set up all this plot. I really hope they didn't change it, because that was my main concern with season 2. I remember saying that they would never change the plot, but then they set up the door with William, and then they ended it with the door to the Valley Beyond. So I'm like, there's a difference there. But yeah. But that's all the questions I'm going to take. Thank you guys so much for all your questions. Really quick, I want to talk about my channel. I'd be really interested in hearing what you guys have to say in the direction. We have people talking about devs. We have Fung, who said that I should review Dark, so I'll have to check that out. We will see. But also, I like to review shows that are punctual too. Maybe I can do something on the side to keep you guys entertained. Maybe we can do live streams to discuss certain topics. I'm not sure. But that's a thing as well. I think another thing too, I think I'm gonna be working on a bunch of different projects. Personally, right now, I have YouTube going on, which is now, Westworld is wrapped up, so I don't really know where I'm gonna go with it. And personally, I actually have my own company, a drywall company, so I'm working on that as well. So I'll be doing that. But also, if you guys watch me through Game of Thrones, and I know you guys watch me for Westworld, but I've always loved doing theories, and there's a lot of theories more for Game of Thrones, but I rewrote the show. I actually really like writing in a sense, because I don't know. I just find that I like my theories more, than what the showrunners actually do. So I think I might start moving in the direction of writing my own show. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing to explore. I wonder if it would be I wonder how long it would take me to do. but I would love the idea of writing my own show, writing out all the seasons, and trying to get it in HBO's hands. I think that'd be kind of fun. But I already have a direction for it, and I've already chartered kind of a world, and I think it's pretty dope. So I think I'm going to work on that casually on the side. So maybe I'll write up a cool story, and then I can share that with you guys. But that's another fun thing I'm doing. But yeah, really that's it. So let me know what shows you want me to check out. I can check them out. And after I end this live stream, you can go back in to the video portion of the live stream and comment on the kind of things you want to see. That way I have a permanent copy of it. I can look into that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think really that's it. That's the end of this Westworld stream. I think we should do one more stream, personally. I think we could do this was like a Westworld Season 3 stream. I think we can do a Westworld Season 4 stream. Yeah, so maybe I'll make an announcement. We'll do one more stream. What the hell? We can get together and talk more Westworld for one last time. Really focus on Season 4. But yeah, who knows? Scampoli says movie discussions or commentaries. I could definitely do that. In terms of what movies, and I think the thing about movies which sucks is like when you watch a show, all of us are watching this big event for like 10 weeks or 8 weeks, whatever. But with a movie, it's just one shot and it's very polarizing. So like if a movie comes out that I really want to do a live stream on, how many people are going to want to tune into the live stream to talk about a movie? Some of them didn't see it. Some of them don't even like the concept. Some people do. So I feel like it sucks because it's hard to pick a direction where everyone will be included and it's not so polarizing. So we will see. So yeah, I guess I'll move towards doing that stream. But yeah, it's really funny. Somebody in the chat said that backer Sultan said, here's an idea, Westworld-like show, but the hosts are dragons. Hey, I don't think you could put it past me. It's like a Westworld Game of Thrones mix. I think it's something very different, though. I tried to go with the deepest possible concept ever because I like to dive deep into content. So basically, I designed it as like the foundation is you create your world. And then the next step of that is you create the purpose of the story. What is the purpose of the entire story? And that's where I think Game of Thrones fell short. Is it was called the Game of Thrones to, who takes over the kingdom, but the show ended with a king that was no better than anyone else. And the big threat was just brushed aside. So if you look at the show as a whole, it had no lesson, it had no purpose, it had no meaning. So it's like, what is this piece of content trying to illustrate? What is the thesis of it? And then once you understand the thesis, you can build on that and find your characters. What kind of arcs do you want? What kind of character development tools do you want? And then you take those characters and you put them in this world you created. And what I'm hoping happens to me is the story just writes itself, where you go based on common sense, like what you think the characters will do. And that's how I do theories. I just learn about the world, like Westworld or Game of Thrones. I learn everything I can about the world, and then I just make the rational decision of what that character would do. And then you'll find the story just take place. But then you need an ending to know where it goes, and then you can hint at the arcs along the way. So that's what I've been working on. We'll see if that takes form. I think it's pretty ambitious, so I don't know. I probably am not going to talk about it anymore because I don't want to breathe life into it, and I also don't want to spoil it. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I'm going to end the stream there. I got to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with my rant yesterday. Thought that was pretty funny. But anyways, I'll make an announcement later where we can do a Westworld Season 4 thing, live stream. So stay tuned for that. Also, I think we have a show coming back very soon too that some of you might be excited about. We have a new Game of Thrones show coming out probably in 2021 if it doesn't get delayed from coronavirus. So we do have another show in the future that we can review together. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This was an absolutely great live stream. The turnout was great. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. Bye.